When was the last time you truly felt like you were living your own life? Not a performance based on what others expect of you, not a script written by your parents, by society, or by fear, but your real life, the one that resonates with the deepest truth of who you are. This question, simple at first glance, holds the power to shatter the masks we've built over decades. Carl Jung, one of the greatest explorers of the human psyche, once warned, "Most people not only have never lived their own lives, but they also don't even suspect they could have lived differently." There is a voice inside you, desperately trying to be heard, a persistent whisper during moments of silence. A shout in your dreams, a restless feeling you can't name but can't ignore either. That voice is your true self, the fullness of who you are, trying to wake you from a dream that was never yours. A dream so familiar, you may have mistaken it for reality. So long-lived, you've forgotten what it's like to truly be awake. Have you ever looked at your life from the outside, like watching a stranger follow a routine that feels vaguely familiar, yet never fully yours? That unsettling feeling that, despite doing everything right, something essential is still missing. Jung called this the unlived life, when we walk paths shaped by outside expectations while our spirit slowly suffocates. And there's a cost to that disconnection, an exhaustion that no amount of rest can heal, an anxiety that medication only numbs for a while, a hollow feeling that no external success can fill. This is the silent scream of your authentic self, begging to be acknowledged. You're not alone in this misalignment. We're living through a silent epidemic of borrowed lives and forged identities, crafted to survive in a world that values conformity more than authenticity. As Jung once said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. A privilege that many of us unknowingly give up. How many times have you felt a sting in your chest, seeing someone do exactly what you've always wanted, but never had the courage to chase? That twist in your stomach when someone speaks of a dream you buried so long ago you forgot it ever existed. These moments are signs, tiny reminders that a part of you is still asleep, waiting to be awakened. The authentic life Jung invites us to live is not a luxury for the few. It is your birthright. It's why you're here at this moment, reading these words. And maybe, just maybe, this isn't a random encounter. Perhaps the universe is conspiring, through what Jung called synchronicities, meaningful coincidences, to wake you up to a truth you already carry deep within. Think for a moment. What if you've spent your entire life honoring a contract you never signed, following rules you didn't help create, chasing dreams that were never yours to begin with? I know Maria, a successful executive who woke up at 45 in the middle of a deep existential crisis. From the outside, she had it all: the title, the salary, the recognition. But when her therapist asked her a simple question, "What brings you joy?" she realized with horror that she didn't know the answer. Years devoted to a career she never consciously chose, she had merely inherited her father's expectations. Financial security above all. Her body eventually answered for her, with an autoimmune disease that no doctor could explain. Jung would have said that was her psyche rebelling against a life that wasn't truly hers. Then there's Jung. He chose the safe route, followed a traditional profession, burying his artistic talent to be responsible. At 50, after a heart attack that nearly killed him, he confessed to his son, "I lived the life my father wanted for me, not the one I wanted for myself." What greater tragedy is there than to reach the end of your life and realize you never truly lived? The pain you might be feeling right now, this sense of being stuck, lost, or disconnected, is not a sign of weakness or failure. Quite the opposite. Jung teaches us that this discomfort is actually a sign of psychic health. It's your soul refusing to settle for less than it deserves. It's your authentic self knocking on the door of your awareness, demanding to be seen. Depth psychology reveals that true illness doesn't lie in unrest or crisis, but in silent conformity to a life that denies our inner truth. As Jung put it, a neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering. In other words, the symptoms we try to suppress, anxiety, depression, existential emptiness, may actually be the pathway to our deepest healing if we dare to listen. Have you ever considered that your constant dissatisfaction might not be a flaw, but a perfectly working inner compass? That your discomfort could be the most honest signal pointing you toward a more fulfilling life? Jung saw it time and again in his clinical work. People fall ill when they drift too far from their essential nature. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you are, he reminded us. Not just a quote to inspire, but a literal prescription for mental and emotional health. When we betray our essence, the body and mind will eventually protest. Chronic anxiety, insomnia, psychosomatic illness. All may be signs of a life out of sync with the true self. You are not broken. You don't need to be fixed. What you are feeling may be the beginning of an awakening. Painful, yes, but profoundly liberating. As Jung said, there is no birth of consciousness without pain. What exists within you is not an emptiness to be filled with distractions, but a calling to be answered. A calling that may have begun as a whisper and has now become a scream too loud to ignore. Jung understood that this call often first appears through the persona, the social mask we create to function in the outside world. The persona itself isn't the problem. We all need to adapt to different social situations. But the problem begins when the mask becomes rigid, when we forget we're wearing it, and mistake it for our real face. How do you know if you're living through a dominant persona that's suffocating your true self? Pay attention. Do you feel oddly uncomfortable when you're alone, with no one to perform for? Do you feel drained after social interactions, as if you've just played an exhausting role? Do you struggle to know what you actually want, beyond others' expectations? Is your internal dialogue full of shoulds and musts instead of wants and choices? When the persona takes over, the cost is high physically and emotionally. The body keeps the score. Chronic tension, digestive issues, mysterious pains. As Jung observed, what you repress doesn't disappear. It is merely transferred to the body. Your body might be sending messages your conscious mind is refusing to hear, and then there is the shadow. The parts of ourselves we've rejected, repressed, and pushed into the unconscious. Jung taught us the more we identify with our idealized persona, the stronger, and potentially more destructive, our shadow becomes. But the shadow doesn't contain just our dark impulses. It also holds unrealized talents, authentic desires, essential pieces of who we are that we sacrifice to fit in. Ignore the shadow, and it finds other ways to emerge. Compulsive behaviors, emotional outbursts with no clear cause. A strange attraction to people who freely express what we've buried inside ourselves. These aren't signs of moral failure. They're clues, urgent signals from the self, trying to restore balance. Try this simple exercise. Sit in silence for a moment. Ask yourself, what would I want to do if no one ever knew about it? If there were no judgment, no consequences, no expectations. The answers that arise, sometimes surprising, sometimes uncomfortable, are golden threads from your authentic self, reaching through layers of conditioning. Disconnection from your true self doesn't happen overnight. It's a gradual process, often beginning in childhood. As Jung wrote, the greatest impact on a child's development lies in what is unspoken and unexpressed by the parent. Maybe you grew up in a home where your sensitivity was seen as weakness, where your curiosity was labeled as distraction, where your natural talents were dismissed because they didn't match the ambitions others had for you. The mother and father complexes, those internalized, often distorted images of our parents, continue to shape our choices long after we leave childhood behind. The critical voice that tells you you're never enough. The paralyzing fear of disappointing authority figures, the desperate need for approval. These aren't just random inner thoughts. They are echoes of parental and societal expectations, playing out behind the scenes of your life. To identify those internal voices that don't belong to your true self, observe your automatic thoughts when you face a big decision. That harsh tone, the demanding fear, the catastrophic prediction, those are rarely your authentic self speaking. More often they're internalized ghosts of the past. Then there's society. Social conditioning layers itself over family wounds, compounding the disconnect. Jung spoke extensively about the collective unconscious, the shared reservoir of human experience and symbolism. Archetypes live here, universal patterns like the hero, the wise old man, the great mother. These archetypes, in their purest forms, offer wisdom and guidance, but when distorted by culture, they become invisible prisons. The hero becomes the unbearable pressure to always win. The great mother becomes the demand for endless sacrifice. The sage becomes the unrealistic expectation of intellectual perfection. We absorb these distorted ideals without ever questioning them, measuring our worth against standards we never consciously chose. And in today's world, that disconnect only deepens. We live in the age of constant comparison. Social media feeds us curated illusions of other people's lives. Success is narrowly defined by wealth, status, and external recognition. As Jung warned, he who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens. But we are constantly pushed to look outward, comparing our rich, messy inner world to the polished surfaces others display. The trauma of the false self happens early, when, in order to survive emotionally, we learn to suppress our true impulses. Maybe you discovered young that your genuine emotions were met with rejection, that your natural interests were mocked, that your authenticity made people uncomfortable. So you adapted. You constructed a self that would be accepted, even if it meant abandoning your truth. This forced abandonment of the true self leaves deep scars, the constant feeling of performing in your own life, the exhausting fear of being found out, the chronic fatigue of holding up a facade. As Jung put it, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. The first step to reclaiming your authentic life is to honestly acknowledge how much of it has been lived according to a script you didn't write. That realization often brings pain, the pain of seeing years, maybe decades, spent in misalignment. But Jung reminds us there is no healing without first the pain of recognition. The good news? Your true self never gives up on you. It keeps sending signals, nudging you back to your path. Dreams are one of its most powerful languages. Jung saw dreams as direct communications from the unconscious to the conscious. They speak in symbols, often compensating for the imbalances of our waking lives. Pay attention to recurring dreams, to the ones that leave you with intense feelings, to the characters who show up again and again. Write them down. Don't rush to interpret them. Over time, patterns will emerge, messages from yourself guiding you home. Your intuition is another reliable compass, that gut feeling, that bodily sensation before the mind can explain. The sudden emotion that doesn't make sense, but feels true. Modern culture teaches us to distrust intuition, to value only rational, logical thought, but Jung insisted on honoring the wisdom of the whole psyche, which speaks through the body, through emotion, through symbols that defy linear logic. So how can you tell the difference between ordinary anxiety and a genuine call from the soul? Neurotic anxiety tends to paralyze. It traps you in endless mental loops, circling the same fears with no way out. But the soul's calling, even when uncomfortable, feels different. It has momentum, direction. It may ache, but it also whispers, "There's more for you than this." As Jung put it, what you resist persists. What you embrace transforms. Life crises, whether around career, relationships, or health, are rarely just random misfortunes. From a Jungian lens, they're often invitations to realignment, moments when life forces us to pause, to question where we're headed. An unexpected layoff might be the space you need to finally explore that path you've long ignored. Health collapse might be your body demanding a total reevaluation of what truly matters. Jung observed that many of his midlife patients weren't suffering from classical neuroses, but from something deeper, a loss of personal meaning. Around the age of 35, he wrote, many begin a descent into hell. This hell is often the painful confrontation with the unlived life, the suppressed desires, the abandoned gifts, the true self that's been exiled in the name of survival. Synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences that feel charged with purpose, are another way the self speaks to us. A book falls open to the exact page you needed. A stranger casually mentions something that touches on what you've been struggling with. Detour leads you to a chance meeting that shifts everything. Jung urged us to notice these moments. They may be signposts on the path back to authenticity. One powerful exercise is to examine your personal myth, the inner story you're living. How to ask yourself, what story am I living? Is it truly mine, or is it one I inherited? Maybe you've been living the savior myth, always rescuing others, neglecting yourself. Perhaps you play the eternal student, always preparing, never daring to act, or the flawless warrior, achieving at all costs, terrified of showing weakness. To uncover what's truly yours, watch what energizes you versus what drains you. Activities aligned with your authentic self tend to create what Jung called flow, a state of total presence where time disappears. In contrast, even success in roles that aren't truly yours leaves a gnawing sense of emptiness. The path to reconnecting with your true self inevitably leads you face to face with the shadow. Jung was clear, there is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. To reclaim your full self, you must acknowledge the parts you've tried to deny. This doesn't mean giving free rein to destructive impulses. It means integrating their energy consciously, transforming what's been rejected into creative force. Start by noticing what triggers you in others, what qualities in people deeply irritate you, their arrogance, their irresponsibility, their emotionality. Often, what we despise in others reflects unclaimed aspects within ourselves. The arrogance you hate may point to your own unspoken ambition. The irresponsibility may mirror your repressed longing for freedom. Instead of rejecting these traits, ask, how can I integrate this energy constructively? Ambition can become excellence without domination. The desire for freedom can evolve into creativity, not recklessness. Your shadow holds not only the dark, but also the unrealized potential. Another vital part of Jungian work is reconciling, with your anima for men or animus for women, the inner contrasexual aspect of your psyche. In a society that rigidly enforces gender roles, many people repress qualities tied to the opposite sex. Men often deny sensitivity, intuition, receptiveness, qualities of the anima. Women may suppress assertiveness, independence, logic, traits of the animus. When these forces are rejected, they wreak havoc in our relationships. We project them onto partners, expecting them to carry what we've disowned. Healing begins when we integrate these inner opposites. A man in touch with his anima accesses depth, emotion, and creative insight without shame. A woman in balance with her animus embraces her power and clarity without guilt or aggression. Jung's technique of active imagination offers a direct way to converse with these inner forces. Unlike traditional meditation, which seeks silence, active imagination invites engagement. Begin in a relaxed state. Let an image arise, a character, a symbol, a scene. Don't just observe, interact. Ask it questions. Listen for answers. Let the story unfold. You don't control the process, you witness and participate. This dialogue bridges the conscious and unconscious, allowing the wisdom of the self to emerge. As Jung said, he who looks inside awakens. The journey back to your true self is not linear, it's a spiral. You'll revisit old wounds, old patterns, but from deeper levels of awareness each time. There will be resistance, both internal and external. Inside, you'll face fear of the unknown, guilt for finally prioritizing yourself, doubt about whether you can actually live authentically. Outside, people who benefited from your misalignment may push back, consciously or unconsciously, trying to keep you in familiar roles. Jung reminds us, one must pay dearly for one's individuality. The price may be misunderstanding, rejection, even painful loss. But the cost of not paying that price? A life of quiet despair, a death accompanied by the bitter regret of what was never lived. The courage to say no to what's imposed begins with small acts of authenticity, saying what you truly think instead of what's expected, spending time on something that nourishes your soul, even if it seems unproductive, setting a boundary where you once would have bent to please. Every no to the false is a yes to the real. As Jung said, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. This is perhaps the most powerful claim to personal agency, that while we may not control all circumstances, we always retain the freedom to choose our response. Reconnecting with your inner child is a powerful part of this process. Before the world taught you to doubt your instincts, before you were shaped to fit into roles, you knew exactly who you were. Your curiosity was genuine, your joy was effortless, your desires were clear. Jung emphasized the archetype of the divine child, the pure, untouched essence that still lives inside you, guarding your original gifts. Engage with this child consciously. Ask, what did I love doing before anyone told me who I had to be? What makes me lose track of time? What fills me with joy for no reason? The answers may point to buried talents, forgotten passions, or parts of you left behind for acceptance. Reclaim play, not as a luxury, but as a vital state of being. Play opens the door to creativity, healing, and discovery. As Jung said, man is fully human only when he plays. Creating rituals of authenticity is a powerful way to anchor your return to the self. Rituals are symbolic actions that give structure to intention. They build a bridge between your inner world and your outer life. As Jung wrote, in all chaos there is a cosmos, in all disorder a secret order. Rituals help us discover and sustain that inner order. Start small, carve out a physical space, however modest, dedicated to your authentic expression. It could be an altar with meaningful objects, a journal where you write freely, corner with art supplies. What matters is that it remains untouched by external demands, a sanctuary for your true self. Also create protected time, even just 15 minutes a day, where you're radically honest with yourself. No judgment, no editing, no performing. This sacred time becomes the foundation upon which your authentic life is rebuilt. Personal symbols can serve as powerful anchors on the journey of individuation. Jung gave immense value to symbols as carriers of psychic energy, bridges between the conscious and the unconscious. Find or create symbols that represent your authentic self. A word, an image, an object. Integrate them into your daily life, reminders of your ongoing commitment to live from your truth. This journey is both internal and external. Eventually, it shows up in the choices you make. For some, that means a complete career shift. For others, it means transforming relationships or quietly but profoundly realigning values. Carlos, a successful executive, realized after years of Jungian therapy that his obsession with financial security came not from his own values, but from his father's trauma around poverty. He didn't quit his job. Instead, he renegotiated his role to prioritize time with his family and returned to his long-forgotten love of music. His outer life looked the same to others, but inwardly it was a revolution. Anna, a devoted mother, discovered through dream work that she had completely surrendered her identity to her roles as wife and mother, a pattern she inherited from watching her own mother disappear into self-sacrifice. Her individuation didn't require abandoning her family. It required reshaping how she lived within it. Jung reminds us, individuation does not isolate you from the world. It reconnects you to it. Becoming your authentic self is not selfish. It's how you serve the world best. Because when you stop living someone else's story and begin to offer your unique gifts, you contribute something that only you can. The question we began with, are you living the life the universe intended, or the one you were told to live, now has a new answer. The life the universe intended isn't a rigid fate. It's the natural unfolding of your authentic self, once freed from the chains of conditioning. As Jung wrote, the flower doesn't dream of becoming a flower, it just blooms. Today, take one small step toward your blooming. Ask yourself, what would a more authentic version of me do right now? Then, gently, courageously, move in that direction. Your true self has never stopped calling. Through dreams, through intuition, through so-called failures that were really divine redirections, through the restlessness that brought you to this moment, to these words, to this truth you've always known deep down. Become who you are, not who they told you to be, not who you think you should be, but who you truly are. That is your birthright, and your greatest responsibility. The world needs it. The world needs you, whole, awake, and alive.